Hey guys, it is Mike from Baltimore Rides here. Starting off the week, it's Tuesday, October 3rd. I'm actually doing a video as I drive down to the city, so this is kind of the start of my day. And I've been thinking about a couple things yesterday while I was off and then this morning, and just wanted to kind of run a couple things by you guys. So, I had some interesting comments lately about, how many trips do I drive? How many hours do I drive? Where am I, kind of just digging in, I guess, to try and get a little bit better understanding of what my day really involves. So I've been thinking about that and kind of processing it and trying to figure out a way I wanted to put it to you guys that made the most sense. So, here's my thought behind that. I am a full-time driver for Uber. Okay, so a lot of the information that I'm giving you guys when I recap my night or when I tell you about my experiences, it's based around me driving 5 to 6 days a week. So that's the first thing I want to preface, is that I drive 5 to 6 days a week. Now, the amount of hours I'm driving varies, but on average, like today, for example, it's 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm about 15 minutes into my drive to work. My commute down to DC, because that's really where I drive. So I won't get to DC until probably 3:30. And that'll be the start of my day. I don't consider my hour commute to work to be, time on the clock, so to speak. I just don't. Just like when I worked a regular job and I drove to work, I don't consider my time commuting to there any more work than I consider this any more work. So, my drive to work is approximately an hour and 15 minutes. It's, that's how long it takes to get from where I live in northern Maryland all the way down to DC. And I've talked about it a lot, guys. And from my past 3 weeks worth of numbers, it's profitable. It's worth it for me to make that investment, because I was struggling to make those kind of numbers driving in Baltimore. So that's that. So I'll start my day, let's call it round numbers, at 4:00 p.m. And I will finish my night tonight somewhere between 1:30 a.m. and 3 a.m. That's usually the times when I quit. Sometime between there. Let's call it 2 to 3. If you do that math, it is a 10 to 11 hour, time period. Now, take out of that 2 to 3 15-minute breaks where I have to find somewhere to make a pee, and take out of that, probably a good 30 to 45-minute meal break where I, get some food, sit in my car or sit on a park bench or whatever and get something to eat, and just let my brain rest for a few minutes. So, is it a longer day than if I were working a 9-to-5 job? Yeah, of course it is. And I've described this to you guys in the past. The analogy I use that I think makes the most sense for most people is, think about the deadliest catch. Think about these guys that are professional fishermen. They go out on the boat, they can't come back until they catch their quota. Whatever their number that they've got to catch is, until they get that number, they stay out. And that's kind of what we do, only in a smaller, measurable, bite-sized piece. I leave at the end of the, I leave for work, and I don't turn for home and start heading home until I've gotten the number where I'm comfortable. Now, some nights it's not my goal. Some nights I settle for, less than $200 a night. Some nights I settle for less than the number of trips I'm looking for. But typically that's on my Monday through Thursday days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those days typically produce the goals I expect, with little to no, problem. So, this is me giving you guys my day and my full-time hours and the hours that I like to drive, because I specifically like to drive these evening hours. I find they're the most profitable. If you're trying to take what I'm talking about on these videos and either scale it down to something part-time or convert it to something that's a different shift during the day, that's fine. You can very much do that. And here's how I'm going to explain how you do that. I had somebody that I was texting just recently. I haven't actually checked up on her in a while, but she was driving mornings, and she was driving in Baltimore. And I said to her, I said, look, I'm not really a subject matter expert on either of those things anymore, but this is what I know. I know that you need to focus on areas where there's a large population center of passengers. So I told her in the morning time, I would be hanging around the hotels. I'd be hanging around the college universities, because those are going to be lots of people that are probably moving around without transportation. And, and that was honestly the same kind of strategy that she had developed for herself, but it worked, and it was consistent for while it was working. So that's a good example, but really what you guys have to focus on is just, where do I want to be? I need to be somewhere where there's a lot of people that are moving around on foot that might want to call an Uber. I don't want to be somewhere like where I live, Westminster, where everybody owns a car and no one really needs to get around that way. And it's too spread out and rural to walk. So that's why Westminster does not do well for Uber. I'm not saying that there aren't people out there using Uber. I've gotten a handful of rides at best out there, but I want to have back-to-back rides. That's my goal, is to make every minute profitable. So for me to do that, I want to be in areas of large population centers, DC. And then when I, microcosm it down, I shrink it down even more. I don't just pick anywhere in DC, because there's lots of suburbs and little residential communities in DC. I think about the areas in DC where it's going to be the most busy, where people are moving around the most. City Center, downtown, U Street, DuPont Circle, Georgetown, GW University, AU, which is American University, those kinds of areas, H Street and Fifth, which is like Chinatown. I pick those areas because I know there's a lot of people on foot, and I know there's a lot of people that are moving to and from, places that they need to get a ride. So if you're scaling it down to your own measurable amount that you can drive, think about it that way. If I do a 10 to 12 hour night, let's round it up to 12, which is probably on the top end of what I drive. That would be like 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. And I do that occasionally, but very rarely. But just for easy math, let's say it's 12 hours is what I drive, and you want to break it down into bite-sized pieces. Take my numbers and divide them into thirds. Hey, you know what? Every 4 hours is a third. So if Mike does $200 a night, a third of that is roughly whatever it is, $70. So that means in 4 hours, I should expect to do around $70. Now, that may be good, that may be bad. I don't know. That may not be what you need, but you have to find a way to take kind of these numbers that I'm giving you, which are my numbers, and find what works for you. Find the amount of trips that you think you can drive, or the amount of hours that you can commit to driving, and break it down so that it works for you. Because that's how you guys are going to reach goals that are a little bit challenging, but they're not outside of your reach. Because if you have goals that are impossible to achieve, you're going to feel dejected, frustrated, and you're probably going to get discouraged. And you're probably going to get what we call burnout, because you're not reaching your goals. If you have goals that are just a little bit outside of your attainability, then it's going to make you want to push yourself a little bit harder, or in my case, work a little bit smarter. Always try and find a way to work a little bit smarter. So, I can't tell you what your goals should be. They're based around kind of a rough number of how many hours you're willing to drive, where you're willing to drive, what time of day it is. So you have to strategize, but you have to think about, where are there the most people? Where can I capitalize on that? What times of day can I drive? How many hours can I commit to? These are all things you need to think about if you're starting out and you're feeling frustrated or you're not quite sure if you're being the most strategic, today's sponsor is Dunkin' Donuts. Unofficial sponsor, guys. Unofficial. I wish I had sponsors. That'd be awesome. But you need to think about these things. As a business person, and this is what I used to do. I was in retail for a long time. Retail is based around the same thing. You think about a store like a Home Depot or a clothing store in the mall, or any of those kind of big box retailers. They have a daily goal of how much they need to sell, and that's it. And then it's, okay, now where do we get it from? How many customers can we count on walking through our door? What businesses in our building or what things in our building can we tap into? And what excitement can we create? What sales? Whatever. They have strategies that they use to break down their daily goal. And really, that's no matter how big or small your business. The Dunkin' Donuts I go to every day in my neighborhood, they're phenomenal, the Dunkin' Donuts in Westminster on 140. But I talked to those guys a lot. I said, how was your day? How's things going? And one day the other week, they gave away free coffee. I think it was either on a day that the Ravens won or a free coffee day. I don't know, some sort of promotion. But they gave away free medium coffees to anybody that came in. And I said, how much money did that cost you in profit? And he said it was about $1,200 in profit that they lost that day, just giving away free coffee. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but for a small building like a Dunkin' Donuts, that could be game changing. That could be so significant to them that it's unbelievable. We have to scale everything to what we do here in the car. If we're driving and, all we need to do is make $300 a week, and let's say you're willing to drive 15 hours a week to get it, well, then do the math. 300 hours, 300 divided by 15, it's basically $100 every 5 hours. Is it doable? Yeah, probably. Is it a bit of a push? It might be. But if you think about my day, and I'm just going to use my numbers because it's numbers I know, between 4 and 10 p.m. is typically when I get my $100. So I do it in 6 with a break in there because I usually eat sometime between 4 and 10. So call it the same roughly 5 hours. I can do $100 in 5 hours on a good night, on an average to good night. So it's doable. Now, okay, then you say, well, what 3 nights am I going to drive? And you have to pick. Obviously, it's around your work schedule if you have another job or your family life or whatever, but you want to pick days that are going to be the most likely to get you customers. I would probably hint, wink, wink, Friday, Saturday should be in those days somewhere. So maybe you pick Thursday, Friday, Saturday are going to be your 3 days. Then you got to pick what hours you're going to drive. You could drive 2 to 8, but is that going to be as profitable driving in the afternoon as driving, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m.? Or are you going to drive late and maybe you drive 6 p.m. to midnight? Whatever you pick, but you got to think about it. You've got to have a plan. And then the best part, you recap. At the end of that 3-day period or 15-hour period, and you look at what you've accomplished, you say, okay, did I miss? Did I make my goal? Did I exceed my goal? And then what can I do differently next week? That's the most important part about this, guys. And you see me doing it in these videos. You see me kind of thinking things through in these videos. But you got to recap and you got to strategize. What can I do differently? So that next week I get a different result. And I've talked about that before, the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's not going to work. If you do the same thing, you're going to get the same result. You've got to switch up your routine, even just little bits. Maybe I'll drive an hour earlier, and maybe I'll drive in this neighborhood and compared to that neighborhood. Little things that might garner you a slightly better result. So, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about, because I think a lot of you guys, when you ask me how much am I driving or how many trips did I do or how many hours did I work, what you're trying to do is and I'm just guessing here, but I have a good understanding. You're trying to wrap your head around the math. You're trying to wrap your head around the recipe, if you're baking a cake, the recipe of the cake, and deciding, is this the right, do I have the right formula? I want to take Mike's formula and I want to reinterpret it. So I'm going to leave you guys with that, and I will get back to you guys later. Let you know how I do tonight.